Something happened to me about 6 months ago that completely shattered everything I thought I knew about achieving goals and personal transformation. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop when I witnessed something that would change my entire perspective on human behavior and success. Before I get into that story, if you're enjoying this content and want to see more videos about productivity, self-improvement, and brain science, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me continue creating this content for you. Now let me take you back to that coffee shop moment. There was this woman who came in every single morning at exactly 6:30 a.m. She'd order the same drink, sit in the same corner, and write in her journal for precisely 20 minutes before heading out. I didn't think much of it at first, but one day curiosity got the better of me, and we struck up a conversation. What she told me was profound. I don't even think about coming here anymore. My body just brings me here. That's when it hit me like a lightning bolt. She wasn't using willpower or motivation. She had somehow programmed her brain to automatically execute this routine. And here's what's absolutely fascinating. You can do this with literally any goal you want to achieve. Your brain doesn't care whether you're programming it for success or failure. It's neutral. It simply follows the instructions you give it through your repeated behaviors. Most people approach goals completely backwards, and honestly, I was one of them for years. They wake up on January 1st, declare they're going to transform their entire life, buy all the equipment, tell everyone about their grand plans, and then nothing. By February, they're back to their old patterns, wondering what went wrong. They blame themselves, their lack of discipline, their genetics, or their circumstances. But here's the truth that nobody talks about. They didn't fail because they were lazy or weak. They failed because they were trying to force change from the top down instead of building it from the ground up. Let me explain what I mean by this. Your brain is essentially a pattern recognition and pattern execution machine. It's constantly observing what you do, not what you say, not what you intend, but what you actually do. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Take one action, and your brain registers it as a random event. Take that same action twice, and your brain starts to notice a pattern forming. Take it 3 times, and something magical begins to happen. Your brain starts to incorporate that behavior into your identity. It begins to think, oh, this is who we are now. This is the fundamental principle that most self-help advice completely misses. They tell you to visualize your ideal self, to think positive thoughts, to declare affirmations in the mirror. And look, there's nothing inherently wrong with those practices, but they're putting the cart before the horse. Your identity doesn't shape your actions shape your identity. This is why the woman in the coffee shop didn't need motivation anymore. Her repeated actions had built an identity as someone who journals every morning. And once that identity was established, the behavior became automatic. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds great in theory, but how do I actually apply this to my life? I'm so glad you asked, because this is where it gets really practical and exciting. The secret is to start so small that it feels almost ridiculous. I'm talking microscopically small. If you want to become someone who exercises regularly, don't commit to going to the gym for an hour every day. Instead, commit to doing 10 push-ups every morning. Just 10. That's it. I can already hear the objections. But 10 push-ups won't get me in shape. And you're absolutely right. 10 push-ups won't transform your body. But that's not the point. Those 10 push-ups aren't about physical transformation. They're about identity transformation. Every time you drop down and do those push-ups, you're casting a vote for the identity of person who exercises. Your brain is taking notes. It's watching. And after a week of consistent push-ups, something shifts in your self-perception. Let me share a personal story to illustrate this. About 2 years ago, I wanted to become a writer. I had all these grand visions of writing a best-selling book, building an audience, making an impact. So what did I do? I set a goal to write 3,000 words every single day. Can you guess what happened? I lasted exactly 4 days before I burned out completely and didn't write again for 3 months. I was devastated. I thought I just wasn't cut out to be a writer. But then I learned about this principle of micro-actions and identity building. I decided to try again, but this time differently. Instead of 3,000 words, I committed to writing just 50 words every day. 50 words. That's like 3 sentences. It felt so small that it almost seemed pointless. But here's what happened. Those 50 words took about 5 minutes to write. There was never a day when I didn't have 5 minutes, so I never missed a day. And after writing for 30 days straight, something incredible happened. I started to see myself as a writer. Once that identity shift occurred, the behavior became easier. Some days I would sit down to write my 50 words and end up writing 500. Not because I forced myself, but because it felt natural. It felt like something a writer would do, and I had become a writer through those tiny daily actions. Now, 2 years later, I write almost every single day, and I've produced more content than I ever dreamed possible. And it all started with 50 words. This is what I call the identity momentum loop, and it's one of the most powerful concepts you can understand for achieving any goal. Here's how it works. Small action creates small win. Small win builds confidence. Confidence strengthens identity. Stronger identity makes next action easier. Easier action leads to consistency. Consistency creates compound growth. And before you know it, you're not trying to reach your goals anymore. You're simply being the person who has already reached them. But here's where most people stumble, and I want to make sure you don't fall into this trap. Your ego is going to fight you on this. Your ego wants dramatic change. It wants to tell the story of the incredible transformation, the massive commitment, the hardcore dedication. Your ego wants you to announce on social media that you're going to run a marathon next month, even though you haven't run in 5 years. But your brain wants consistency. Your brain wants proof through repeated behavior. Your brain wants those tiny signals, day after day, that tell it who you're becoming. This is the battle that determines whether you'll succeed or fail at any goal. Ego versus brain. And I can tell you from years of observation, both in my own life and in studying hundreds of successful people, the brain always wins eventually. You can let your ego drive for a little while, but it runs on motivation, which is like rocket fuel, powerful but finite. Your brain runs on habit, which is like solar power, consistent and renewable. The question is, which one are you going to trust? Now that we understand this fundamental principle of identity formation through action, let's dive deeper into the mechanism that makes this possible. Your brain is equipped with something called neuroplasticity, which is just a fancy term for your brain's ability to change and rewire itself throughout your entire life. This is genuinely one of the most exciting discoveries in neuroscience over the past few decades. Think of your brain as a dense forest, and your thoughts, behaviors, and habits are passed through that forest. The first time you take a new action, you're basically hacking through thick underbrush with a machete. It's hard work. It requires conscious effort. You have to think about every step. But if you take that same path the next day, it's slightly easier. The undergrowth is already disturbed. By the third day, there's a faint trail forming. By the 30th day, there's a clear path. And by the 300th day, there's a highway. This is literally what's happening in your brain at a neural level. Every time you repeat a behavior, you're strengthening the neural connections associated with that behavior. The neurons that fire together wire together, as neuroscientists like to say. And here's the beautiful part. Your brain doesn't distinguish between good and bad behaviors in this process. It simply strengthens whatever you practice. This means that yes, you can train your brain to automatically reach your goals, but it also means you might currently be training your brain to automatically avoid your goals. If you repeatedly scroll through social media when you should be working, you're building neural highways for distraction. If you repeatedly choose comfort over challenge, you're building neural highways for avoidance. But the instant you understand this, you gain the power to change it. Here's where it gets even more interesting. You might be thinking, okay, so I need to build new neural pathways for good habits. But what about my old bad habits? How do I get rid of those? This is where most people make a critical mistake. They try to fight their old habits directly. They use willpower to suppress urges, to resist temptations, to battle against their own inclinations. And this approach is exhausting and ultimately ineffective. Let me give you a quick demonstration. For the next 10 seconds, I want you to try really hard not to think about a blue elephant. Don't picture a blue elephant in your mind. Don't imagine its trunk or its large ears. Really focus on not thinking about a blue elephant. Okay, what happened? You thought about a blue elephant, right? That's because your brain can't process negative commands effectively. When you tell yourself, don't eat junk food, your brain hears eat junk food and has to actively suppress that thought, which actually makes you think about junk food more. The solution? Don't fight the old path. Build a new one. Instead of trying to stop checking your phone first thing in the morning, create a new morning routine that's so engaging your phone becomes irrelevant. Instead of trying to stop eating junk food, focus on adding healthy foods you genuinely enjoy to your diet. Instead of trying to stop procrastinating, focus on making the first step of your important task so small and easy that starting becomes automatic. Every time you take the new path, two things happen simultaneously. First, you're building and strengthening new neural connections, that highway through the forest we talked about. Second, you're allowing the old path to grow over from neglect. Because here's another crucial principle. Neural pathways that aren't used begin to weaken. This process is called synaptic pruning, and it's your brain's way of being efficient. Why maintain a highway that nobody uses? This is how real, lasting change happens. Not through willpower and restraint, but through consistent practice of new behaviors until they become automatic. And the timeline for this? Research suggests it takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days for a new behavior to become automatic, with the average being around 66 days. But here's the key. Those are 66 days of consistency, not 66 days of perfection. You're going to miss days. You're going to stumble. That's not failure. That's being human. The only failure is giving up entirely. Let me share one final insight that ties all of this together. The most successful people aren't the ones with the most motivation or the strongest willpower. They're the ones who have engineered their lives to make success automatic. They've set up their environment, built their habits, and shaped their identity in such a way that reaching their goals is simply the natural result of who they become. You can do this too. Start today. Pick one goal, break it down into the smallest possible action, and commit to doing it every single day for the next month. Don't worry about the results. Don't worry about whether it's enough. Just focus on casting that vote for your new identity through consistent action. Your brain is watching, learning, and adapting. Before you know it, you won't be trying to reach your goals anymore. You'll be automatically living as the person who has already reached them. Thank you for watching. I'd love to hear in the comments. What's the one micro action you're going to start with today? And remember, transformation isn't about giant leaps. It's about tiny steps taken consistently over time. I'll see you in the next video.